You know what? I've been doing this for over 20 years. 20 years of sitting in this chair, watching people walk out onto this stage with shaking hands and trembling lips, telling me they've got something the world has never seen. And I've heard it all. Every sob story. I've been singing since I was 3. Every Simon, this is my last chance. And I'll be honest with you, so most of the time I sit here and I think to myself, please just surprise me. For once in your life, just surprise me. Because the truth is, this world is full of people who are in pain. Real, crushing, suffocating pain. The kind that doesn't show up on your face when you walk into a job interview. The kind that sits in your chest at 2 a.m. when the house is quiet and you're wondering, what am I even here for? People who have been told their whole lives that they're not enough, not talented enough, not young enough, not the right look, not the right sound, not the right anything. And they carry that. They carry it with them every single day. And then sometimes one person walks out onto a stage like this one, and everything changes. Gary Valenciano walked out here tonight, and I want to be very clear about what I saw before he even opened his mouth. I saw a man who had lived, not just existed, lived. There's a difference. Most people you put in front of an audience, they're performing for validation. They want you to clap so they can feel real. But Gary didn't walk out here for our applause. He walked out here because he had something inside him that had been building for decades, and it needed to come out. You could see it in his eyes. That quiet confidence that isn't arrogance, it's truth. And truth, ladies and gentlemen, is the rarest thing on this stage. Now, let me put this in context, because I think people watching at home need to understand what we're dealing with here. The Philippines has produced some of the most extraordinary vocal talent this planet has ever heard. And I don't say that lightly. I've worked with artists from every corner of the world. I know what raw talent looks like. But what makes Filipino artists different, and I've thought about this a lot, is that they don't just sing at you. They sing through you. They reach past your ears and your brain, and they go straight for that thing in your chest that you've been trying to protect your whole life. That soft, breakable, terrified little part of you that you never let anyone touch. And they touch it without asking permission. Marcelito Pomoy did it. When that man stood on this stage and his voice split into 2, I mean literally split, I'm talking about soprano and bass coming out of the same human throat, I looked around this room and I saw grown men who hadn't cried since their childhood, sitting with tears running down their faces. I saw it, and I thought, this is why we do this. This is why this show exists. Not for the tricks, not for the spectacle, but for those moments when you realize that a human being is capable of something so extraordinary that it makes you question everything you thought you knew about limits. Gary Valenciano tonight gave us one of those moments. And here's what I want to say to every single person sitting at home right now who's been told they've missed their window, who's been told they're too old, who's been told the dream they've been carrying since they were a child is no longer viable, who picked up a practical career because someone, maybe a parent, maybe a teacher, maybe a cruel voice in their own head, convinced them that wanting more was reckless. I want to look directly into that camera and say, you were lied to. And Gary Valenciano just proved it. Because here's the thing about real talent. Real God-given soul-forged talent. It doesn't expire. It doesn't go stale. If anything, if you've actually lived, if you've actually suffered, if you've actually loved somebody and lost somebody and gotten back up anyway, your talent deepens. It becomes something that a 22-year-old with perfect pitch and a great Instagram following simply cannot replicate. You cannot manufacture the weight that Gary carries in his voice. You cannot manufacture the way every single note he sang tonight felt like it had a memory attached to it, like it came from somewhere real. And that is not something you can teach. That's not something you get from vocal coaching or from watching YouTube tutorials or from recording covers in your bedroom. That comes from a life. And Gary has lived one. I want to talk about what he actually did up there because I don't think the cameras fully captured what was happening in this room. When he started, and I'll be honest, I was skeptical. I'm always skeptical. That's my job. My job is to be the voice of reality in a room that sometimes gets swept away by emotion. And the first few seconds, I was leaning back, arms crossed, waiting to see if this was going to be another technically competent performance that ultimately means nothing. And then something happened. He hit a note. I don't even know which note it was. It doesn't matter. And the air in this room changed. I'm not being dramatic. Ask anyone who was sitting in these seats tonight. The air changed. It got heavier. It got warmer. And I watched Howie's jaw drop. I watched Sophia's hand go to her mouth. And I sat there thinking, there it is. There it is. Because what Gary has, and this is what separates the truly extraordinary from the merely excellent, is that he doesn't perform emotion. He is emotion. When he sings about pain, he has felt that pain. When he sings about joy, he has earned that joy. And the audience knows the difference. Your subconscious knows the difference even when your conscious mind doesn't. That's why your eyes fill up at a performance like that before you've even processed what's happening. Your body understands something true is occurring before your brain catches up. And I think, and this is the part I really want people to hear, I think we are living in a world right now that is desperately hungry for that kind of truth. We are drowning in content. Every platform, every screen, every device is screaming at you 24 hours a day with something designed to grab your attention for 15 seconds and then vanish. And in the middle of all that noise, a man stands on a stage and opens his mouth and suddenly silence. Not because there's nothing happening, but because what's happening is so real that all the noise just falls away. That's power. That is genuine, irreducible human power. And no algorithm can produce that. No AI can manufacture that. No trend cycle can create or destroy that. It simply exists in certain human beings, and Gary Valenciano is one of them. Now, I have a habit on this show of saying things that make me unpopular. And tonight I'm going to do it again because I think it needs to be said. We, meaning the entertainment industry, meaning talent shows, meaning the culture at large, we have a problem with age. We have a deeply embedded, rarely spoken, incredibly damaging bias against anyone who didn't become famous before the age of 30. And we frame it as being about relevance, about marketability, about connecting with a young demographic. But what it really is, and I've been guilty of this myself, I'm not standing here pretending I haven't. What it really is fear. Fear of depth, fear of complexity, fear of an artist who can't be easily packaged and sold as something simple and bright and disposable. Because artists like Gary, artists who carry everything they've been through in every single note, they make you feel things that are uncomfortable. They make you confront things you'd rather not confront. And that is threatening to a culture that has decided that entertainment should be frictionless and consequence-free. But tonight, in this room, there was no hiding from it. You felt it. Every single person in those seats felt something real. And I genuinely believe that that is exactly what the world needs right now. Not more polish, not more production value, not more perfect teeth and perfect hair and perfectly curated backstories. We need more truth. We need more Gary Valenciano. We need more artists who have been through the fire and come out the other side, not destroyed, but refined. Not bitter, but luminous. Because that's what he was up there tonight. Luminous. Like something that had been compressed under enormous pressure for a very long time and then finally given space to shine. So here is what I want to say directly to Gary. I want to say, I don't know what the road looked like to get you to this stage tonight. I don't know what you sacrificed. I don't know what nights you sat alone wondering if any of it was worth it, but I want you to know that every single thing that happened to you, the good and the terrible and the ordinary and the extraordinary, every single bit of it is in your voice. And your voice is one of the most remarkable instruments I've ever heard in my life. Not because it's perfect, but because it's true. And truth in this business is worth more than perfection every single day of the week. You didn't just leave me speechless tonight, Gary. You reminded me why I started caring about music in the first place. And that is not something that happens very often. So from me, genuinely, without qualification, without caveats, without my usual armor of cynicism intact, thank you. Thank you for what you did on this stage tonight. The world needed to see it. And I, for one, am very glad it did. That's a yes from me. Obviously, total. 10,000 characters. AGT Simon Cowell voice throughout.
No headings.
One continuous escalating emotional arc. Hook, human pain, Marcelito reference, Gary's power, industry truth, redemption close. You said, no comlet script, please, no comlet script, please, 6. 5. AM Claude responded, here is the complete, unbroken script. One single flowing piece, no headings, no labels, no breaks. Here is the complete, unbroken script. One single flowing piece, no headings, no labels, no breaks. You know what nobody tells you when you sign up to sit in this chair? Nobody tells you that after 20 years of doing this, 20 years of auditions, 20 years of acts walking through that curtain with everything they have left, that the hardest part isn't being harsh. The hardest part is staying open, because this job will close you down if you let it. You see enough mediocrity, enough people who thought they were special and turned out to be ordinary, and something in you starts to shut, starts to protect itself, starts to expect disappointment so reliably that when something real comes along, Your first instinct is to disbelieve it, to find the flaw, to look for the trick. And I'll tell you something I don't say very often in public. I walked into this theatre tonight already half closed, already armored, already waiting for the evening to confirm what I've come to suspect about the world, which is that genuine, soul-altering, life-changing talent is extraordinarily rare, and the odds of it walking through that curtain on any given night are very, very slim. I was wrong, and I am delighted to tell you that I was wrong. But before I get to what happened on this stage tonight, I need to talk to you about something that nobody in the entertainment industry likes to talk about honestly. And that is the quiet, relentless, soul-destroying experience of being told you are not enough. Not young enough, not current enough, not the right look, the right sound, the right brand, the right demographic. I need to talk about what it does to a person to carry a gift inside them, a real, genuine, God-given gift, and to have that gift dismissed, minimized, overlooked, or simply never given a proper stage. Because that is not an abstract problem. That is the reality for millions of people on this planet right now. People who sang in their bedrooms as children and felt for the first time in their lives completely and utterly themselves. People who stood in front of a mirror with a hairbrush microphone and understood in that pure, uncomplicated way that children understand things before the world teaches them to doubt themselves, that this was what they were made for. And then life happened. And someone told them to be practical. Someone told them the odds. Someone told them the dream was beautiful but irresponsible. And so they folded it up and put it somewhere safe inside themselves and got on with the business of surviving. And the gift stayed there. Waiting, patient in a way that only the truest things are patient, because the truest things know they are not going anywhere. They know they will wait as long as they need to wait. I have seen what happens when that waiting ends. I have seen it on this stage, and it is one of the most powerful things a human being can witness. I saw it when a young man named Marcelito Pomoy stood in front of me and opened his mouth and produced something that my brain genuinely could not process for several seconds. A voice that split. Not a voice that could do two things, a voice that literally, in real time, in the same breath, occupied two completely opposite ends of the human vocal spectrum simultaneously. A soprano and a bass living inside the same throat, taking turns with the kind of precision that should be physically impossible, except that it wasn't because it was happening right in front of my face. And the audience had gone from polite applause to absolute stunned silence. And I remember looking around the room and seeing people in various states of emotional collapse, grown adults gripping each other's arms, people who came here tonight expecting to be modestly entertained and were instead being fundamentally rearranged. That is what the Philippines has been sending to this stage. That is the tradition. That is the standard. And tonight, that tradition arrived again, wearing a different name, with a different story, carrying a different kind of fire. And it burned just as bright. Gary Valenciano walked out here, and the first thing I noticed, before the music, before the first note, before any of it, was the way he carried himself. Now, I want to be precise about what I mean, because there is a version of stage confidence that is essentially performance. It is the practiced stillness of someone who has rehearsed being calm. You can always spot it because it is too smooth. There is no texture to it, but what Gary had as he walked to that microphone was something categorically different. It was the stillness of a man who has made peace with something, who has been through enough, seen enough, felt enough, lost enough, and gained enough, that the idea of a room full of strangers judging him has been reduced through the sheer weight of lived experience to something he can simply stand inside without flinching. That is not a technique. That is a life. And I was already paying attention before he sang a single word. And then he sang, and I am going to try to describe what happened in this room because I think it deserves an honest account. It started simply. Just his voice and the music underneath it, and the particular quality of silence that falls over an audience that has suddenly realized it is in the presence of something it didn't expect. That quality of collective held breath. And as he moved through the first verse, I became aware of something that I can only describe as inevitability. Every note he sang felt not like a choice, but like a conclusion. Like something that had always been true and was only now being spoken aloud. His voice was not doing what most voices do on this stage, which is to show you what it can do. It was not demonstrating range for the sake of range, or hitting big moments because big moments get big reactions. Every single thing he did was in service of something else. Something behind the song, something underneath the song, something that the song was only a vehicle for. And when he got to the center of it, When he got to that place in the performance where the armor comes off and the real thing shows itself, I felt it physically, not metaphorically, physically, in my chest, like a pressure releasing, like something that had been held at tension, finally being allowed to rest. And here is what I want to say to every person watching at home who has a dream they have been quietly keeping alive in some protected corner of themselves for years, maybe decades. Here is what Gary proved tonight, beyond any argument, beyond any dismissal, beyond any of the practical, sensible, well-meaning reasons you have been given to stop believing. He proved that time does not diminish the real thing. He proved that when a gift is genuine, not manufactured, not curated, not constructed out of training and effort alone, but genuinely present in a person from whatever source gifts come from, it does not weaken with time. It deepens. It accumulates. It gathers everything you have been through and it transmutes it into something extraordinary. Every heartbreak, every failure, every morning you woke up and weren't sure you could keep going. Every moment of doubt and every moment of stubborn, unreasonable, irrational hope. All of it went into what Gary gave us tonight. You can hear it. You cannot fake that. You cannot produce that in a recording studio by stacking harmonics and tuning the imperfections out. The imperfections are precisely the point. The weight is the point. The evidence of a life fully felt is the point, and it was present in every single note. I want to be direct about something else because I think it matters and I think we don't say it enough in this industry. We have a bias problem. Not a controversial, politically loaded bias problem. A simple, almost embarrassingly obvious one. We are obsessed with newness. We are obsessed with youth. We structure our entire understanding of an artist's career around the idea that the beginning is the most valuable part, that the freshness of a new voice is the thing worth investing in, and that once an artist has lived past a certain point, they have somehow used up their relevance. This is one of the stupidest ideas the entertainment industry has ever produced, and it has cost us incalculably. Think of everything we have missed. Think of every artist who was told in middle age that they had had their chance, who walked away from stages they deserved to stand on for another 20 years because the culture decided their moment had passed. I think about that a lot. I think about the music that was never made, the performances that were never given, the rooms that were never transformed, and I think it is a genuine, serious cultural tragedy. And then someone like Gary walks through that curtain and reminds me that the tragedy is not inevitable, that it can be interrupted, that a stage like this one, in a moment like this one, can correct something that went wrong somewhere in the story, can say, we see you. We always should have seen you. We are paying attention now, because Gary Valenciano is not a discovery tonight. He is not a surprise in the way that we typically use that word on this show, meaning something new that nobody knew about. He has been doing this for decades. He has been standing on stages, singing his truth, giving everything he has to audiences who received it and were moved by it and carried it home with them. He is not unknown. He is not untested. He is something rarer and more valuable. He is an artist who has been refined by time into something that simply could not have existed 20 years ago. The voice you heard tonight is the voice of a man who has outlasted his doubts, who has sung through the difficult years and the quiet years and the years when nobody was watching and kept singing anyway, not because he was sure it would lead anywhere, but because he had no other honest choice. That fidelity to the thing inside you, that refusal to betray the gift, even when the world gives you every practical reason to, that is a form of courage that I genuinely respect. And it produced something that this entire room felt in their bodies tonight, and that I suspect many of them will still be thinking about when they go to sleep. So here is where I land. I land here. This is what America's Got Talent is supposed to be for. Not for the spectacle, though spectacle has its place. Not for the novelty acts or the comedy or the incredible dogs, though all of those things have value and I enjoy them more than I probably show. But at its beating heart, this show exists for moments like tonight. It exists to be the place where the world is interrupted, where someone who has been patient for a very long time is finally given the stage they deserve in front of an audience large enough to matter and given the chance to show the full measure of what they are. And that is what happened. That is exactly what happened. And I will not pretend to be unmoved by it because I am not a person who pretends well, and I was moved, genuinely. The kind of moved that resets something in you. That reminds you what you originally cared about before the industry got to you and made caring seem naive. Gary Valenciano reminded me tonight why music matters, why voices matter. Why the decision to stand up in front of people and open yourself completely and sing the truest thing you know how to sing? Why that decision is an act of profound generosity and profound bravery every single time, without exception, without diminishment. Every single time, I am giving you a yes. Not a polite yes. Not a this was better than expected yes. A full yes. A loud yes. A yes that I want the people at home to hear clearly because I want them to understand what they witnessed tonight. They witnessed something that does not come along often. And I want them to go to bed tonight remembering that the thing they have been keeping folded up inside themselves might be exactly what the world is waiting for. That the voice they have been afraid to use might be the voice someone somewhere desperately needs to hear. That the dream they were told was impractical has been waiting patiently for them to come back to it, the way the truest things always wait, because the truest things know they are not going anywhere. Gary Valenciano came back. And look what happened. Look what happened in this room tonight. That is the answer to every sensible reason you ever gave yourself to stop believing. That is the answer. And it sounds like that. It sounds exactly like that.